Hello and welcome to the interview show. This video has been a long time in the making. In this episode I'm talking to Lee Gambin, who's a film historian and writer. He's done projects working with Arrow Video and Kino Lorber, from audio commentaries to video essays. He's written books about films and various topics, strongly on horror and Stephen King and television history. He's worked with labels such as Fangoria, and he co-hosts the CineManiacs, a film group in Melbourne. In this particular interview, we actually did it over Zoom, which I've never done before, so I've kind of done a different video editing style. Hopefully it looks good at least. But yeah, so Lee spared some of his time, and we got a pretty fun interview talking about his whole history with film and writing and all this kind of jazz. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Oh, cool. I think we can get started.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So hello, Lee. Welcome, welcome to that interview show. From the coziness of your own home. Thank you for joining me. I guess just introduce yourself to the audience, just in case they don't know who you are. In terms of occupation, what do you do, and all that jazz.
Sure. So my name's Lee Gambin. I'm a writer and film critic and author. I've written a number of books on varied topics. A book on eco horror movies, a book on 70s film musicals, a book on 2-volume book on very special episodes from TV sitcoms, and a bunch of monographs on films: The Howling, Cujo, and Christine.
Yes, that's one I've got in my possession right now.
Very good. And do a lot of work with home media, which has basically been my core work for a long time now, for a while now. So doing audio commentaries and essays and video essays for a bunch of companies, such as Kino Lorber and Arrow and Imprint, etc. So it's been awesome. What else? I program CineManiacs, which is a Melbourne rep screening thing every month. Worked at different film festivals, but yeah. So do a wide range of things.
Yeah, I've actually, as I mentioned, I've got with me in my possession the Hell Have No Fury Like Her, the making of Christine, which you lovely signed once you're half drunk, which is always great. Goes to show Lee's a great guy to hang out with. Not just informative, but also a good character. I've got the Kino Lorber release of Killdozer, which you suggested to me at Minotaur, which was very fun to watch. Godspell, which I loved. It was an absolute bizarre watch, but I did watch it twice so I could listen to your audio commentary, and like Craig said, very informative. And finally, because I figured I'd want to have some fun with one more commentary, I watched your commentary on Carrie with Alexandra, which was really cool because you'd introduced me to her at the last CineManiacs screening. Cool. So yeah, and I've collected some of her books and realized, oh my god, I've got like 20 or 30 audio commentaries of her, as well as video essays and such in my library, in my film library at home. So yeah, it's like it's cool to like meet all the people that like do all the cool shit on your DVDs. Obviously, you've been one of them. So yeah, for me in particular, it's like it feels bizarre given how, for me personally, meeting you was like, you worked at a retail store in the city and suggested a bunch of movies. And then one day I was at the store in the city. I guess I can just name the store being Minotaur, of course. Why not? Free promotion. And you had suggested that there was, the CineManiacs night was coming up, and I'd never heard of it. Maybe my mate had never heard of it. And you said that there was, 2 people doing I think maybe one of them was doing a presentation. I think it was Eloise. And I was like, oh shit, that's my lecturer, it's the person who teaches me at uni. So it's kind of caught me up in that kind of field where I was already in the process of, as of uni, buying more films and discovering different labels like Criterion and Arrow Video and Kino and such. And then to add on to that, oh yeah, we've also got special features and, commentaries and film historians, and all this stuff exists. And I'm like, this is what I'm studying. And it's like, this is kind of maybe something that I could do in the future, which is really cool because I love writing essays. So yeah, I guess I should ask, what exactly got you into this field for everything with film and television?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a pretty easy question to answer. It's about basically growing up loving movies and TV,
Yeah.
really, ultimately. So ever since I can remember being a kid, I watched everything. I was spoiled as well because in the 80s we had really, really good TV programming. So,
Mm.
for instance, you'd wake up, it would be great cartoons, it would be great TV movies in the midday, or talk shows or soap operas. Into the afternoon, you have sitcoms, and you have all the movie programming. So you'd have also midday movies, which would be all your classics as well. So you'd be ranging from Francis the Talking Mule to Man Park Kettle to Shirley Temple to Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin films. Then at night, you'd have a whole wide range of programming from horror films and musicals and westerns and noir and classics. And you had all these great TV hosts back then, like Bill Collins and Ivan Hutchinson. There was always late night horror film stuff that was going on. So it was just freaking awesome. And then also, of course, the video boom. So, I grew up in the early 80s. So therefore, VHS was huge. So, it was an inexpensive way to entertain yourself for ages, and you just rent a whole stack and watch them over and over again. So film was just, just part of my life and my growing up. So I guess what happened was, I got into my teens and, thought, I should start writing about movies just for the hell of it. And I used to just start writing here and there just for myself. It was never really sent anywhere or given anywhere. And then I remember just sort of thinking, oh, high school's so like a waste, like it's annoying. Like, of course I'll do it and finish it and I'll, go to uni, but I'm like, ugh, this is all just shit. I'd rather be watching movies. So films were my education rather than teachers, because it was, even going to like media school or the RMIT, I did like film production and film, a film course, and the teachers had no idea about the movies I was talking about. So I was like, what the hell? So I was just like, well, you know what? I'd rather just watch movies, and that's my education, and read a shitload of film criticism and film books. So I was obsessed with finding books, and that was a huge film education as well. And also, the magazines, like, all your film magazines, things like Famous Monsters or Fangoria or whatever, but also all the other sort of, academic texts, etc. And then I started my own zine, and that sort of led me towards doing this sort of more professionally. And then finally, I got a job at Fangoria, and that was awesome. So I remember getting excited about my first pieces published in Fangoria. I was like, this is a magazine I grew up with, and now I'm in it. And then that led to just sort of more work here and there. And then the book deals stuff started to happen, and then home media stuff. So it was basically this really long, progressive journey into doing things. I think there's a lot of people who kind of expect to do things straight off the hat, and it's like, nah, you have to pay your dues. I think you have to kind of work into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a while, but I got there, and it's good. It's like it's nice to have all this work. It's really fucking awesome. Anyway, so after that, there was all these other sort of offshoots. So more books, starting a film rep society that was very, very DIY, very grassroots. Also coming from like the punk culture and the rock and roll sort of scene in Melbourne, that kind of coincided with the film stuff as well. And that was kind of, I think everyone needs to, in their teens and in their 20s, really needs to cut loose and go wild. I think it's really important. I really do. So therefore, that was the whole period of maybe not being as productive as I would have liked to have been in retrospect. But I think it's necessary to just, be wild and go crazy. And then what happens is you kind of filter all that sort of lifestyle, and you kind of make it work for you. And then you just really focus, you hone in on your focus, and then you become, more professionally sort of geared later. And then all that, yeah, so I think that's all that part and parcel thing. And then also just being from a working class background and someone who grew up in the Western suburbs, and someone who really prides himself in being from the Western suburbs and very working class, is really important as well. I think that feeds into my work. And also just the whole idea of, talking about films and championing movies that a lot of people probably don't. So always sort of looking after the underdog and championing the underdog. And I think that's something I like to bring to the table. And also the other thing that I think is really important, and I'm really, really blessed that I'm one of these people that love this, is the fact of loving a wide range of film. And like, a huge breadth of film because there's a lot of people out there, and bless them, but who are
Yeah.
just obsessed with one kind of film. And it's
Mm.
interesting because a lot of academics, because a lot of them have to, their scholarship is on one specific topic. It's like, fuck, I've spoken to academics who haven't seen nearly as much movies as me or other people like myself who, didn't rely on the university system. Where it's like, fucking hell, you are just so hooked onto one thing.
Mm.
That's great. But I think it's great to have a wide breadth. And also, when you have a big, wide range of love, it actually lends itself to getting more work. So I can jump from doing a 50s Western to noir of the 30s to a women's picture of the 40s to a slasher film of the 80s. That's what you need to do, I think. And I think just pure film love and cinephilia is something that needs to be kind of massive and wide stretching. But yeah, so I think that's a long answer to your question. So
Yeah, no, look, I relate to that a lot, but of course I'm like a younger generation, so like I have the internet to grow up on, but like I had the
right.
same thing where we had a whole shelf just full of DVDs that my dad would buy, and he was lucky enough to have a slight range of different stuff. So in terms of not just, English speaking film, so I did grow up with some French or Japanese stuff. So like still traditional, like, oh, you got Ghibli, you've got or Ghibli, I still never know how to pronounce it. But then you've got, Godzilla, you've got French films like Amelie and such. And for me, that gave me as a kid like a good range of stuff. My dad would like tape films on SBS that we'd watch, and he'd be like, "Oh, you got to watch this one; it's great." So like, and he was also very into old noirs, classic Hitchcock, all kinds of older films. So I never personally had like much distaste for any particular genre or age of film. Like even having gone to university and having met a bunch of different people even in university, luckily, because most of us had also, had the internet and stuff, a lot of us were still very broad-minded. Of course, a lot
Yeah.
of us still weren't. Still, so many people who I think I had to do a first year class in my last year of uni, and one of the first classes the teacher, which was actually Craig, he wanted to know like what our main dislikes were in film as like a genre collectively. And I think I was one of two people who actually liked the romantic comedy genre because all of these, 19-year-olds had grown up with the Netflix genre of it, and it was just not so
Yeah.
great. Whereas I had grown up with a lot more classics. And I mean, When Harry Met Sally is one of my favorite films. I'm like, okay, cool, you do you, but eventually you'll be like me and you'll have a broader range, at least to some degree. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where people don't understand. They like when people speak in absolutes, it really irritates me. People say, "Oh, I
Mm,
don't like romantic comedies." Well,
yeah.
they've been around forever, like
Yeah.
since the dawn of cinema. They're not just a new thing, and they're not just annoying Hallmark kind of style. Even though I'm a big fan of a lot of the Hallmark films,
Yeah.
but it goes way back. And also, the thing is that the golden age of romantic comedies is the 30s. So you have like the screwball comedies really, really smart, savvy films about gender politics, about the relationship between men and women. You've got class stuff in there. You've got a whole bunch of stuff, all these great scripts written by people like Ruth Gordon, all these amazing women writers and all these films that really talked about and tapped into the interpersonal relationships between men and women and how they relate. A lot of romantic comedies were about careerist women. They were about working class women, working class men. They were about middle class people. There was a whole wide range of these films, and also the fast thing. Just this really clever writing and beautiful stars like Irene Dunn or Cary Grant, all these great stars who were legendary, who just reveled in romantic comedies. And then when you get to like the 50s, the romantic comedy kind of starts to become into the 60s, but when the production code starts to sort of go away, you have the films turn into like sex comedies. And if you think of like the Rock Hudson, Doris Day pictures, they're very, very explicitly about sex. And it's great. So it's all, the romantic comedy thing is really, really clever and beautiful and comforting. It's like comfort viewing. I think what happened was, you mentioned it when Harry Met Sally, which is a stunning film, and that's like a nice throwback to classic romantic comedy stuff of the golden age. But after that, I think there was like a wave in maybe like the late 90s and into the 2000s where it was kind of a bit wanky. Also, it was a bit kind of, oh God, like a bit saccharine and a little bit also just obnoxious, like just really annoying films that were being made. And I think a lot of people watching them would have hated them, especially men. And I think that's another thing as well, how a lot of audience spectatorship starts to gender genre. So a lot of guys will go, ugh, they'll snub their nose at romantic comedies because they deem them as quote unquote chick flicks. And so that's really interesting as well. So, you know, there's this inherent sort of heterosexism with romantic comedies that come with these audiences, and I'm guessing the guys that you went to school with as well. But there's a snobbery as well. It's like, oh, romantic comedies are fluffy and frilly and not really important. They don't say anything, but that's bullshit. Even the shittest ones from, you know, the early 2000s or whatever have say something. But yeah, no, yes, I think that's really interesting that you're talking also about how you were raised by someone like your dad who introduced you to a whole range of things. I think that's really important for a lot of people. To a degree, I guess I was, but not really. Like my mum really enjoyed films and still does and loves films, and she'd always have, you know, would all, you know, a lot of times we'd watch them together when I was a child. But it was me on my own really finding things out. And I remember like distinct kind of moments where I was like, oh, this is beyond what everyone else around me is into. I remember I've told this story before, but I was obsessed with, you know, making sure I watched everything that looked remotely interesting in the TV guide or whatever. And one night, Channel 7, which had the rights to a lot of Paramount content, aired Grease on television. And with me and my cousins who would always get together on weekends, had seen it before, love it, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to watch it again on television. So it was on. And after Grease was a film called Bug, a Janae Schwartz film from 1975, which was based on the novel from Thomas Page called The Fistus Plague, which is about killer bugs, these cockroaches that emerge from the ground after an earthquake, and they set fires, and Bradford Dillman's in it and Paddy McCormack. It's a great film. And I was like, okay, I need to see this film. And I remember all my cousins by the end of Grease just went to bed. And I was like, okay, well, no, I'm staying up for Bug. And I recorded it on video. And I remember going, wow, none of them wanted to stay up to watch this film because they weren't keen on A, either staying up late, or B, they had no interest in the movie because all they wanted to see was Grease. And I was like, you should love both movies. So I remember watching Bug and just being in love with it and going, okay, I think this is me. And this was probably when I was a little bit older, like maybe 11 or 12. So like coming out of being, you know, sleepover mode, and going, okay, I think this whole movie thing is far more important to me than it is with these people, these cousins or relatives or friends or whatever.
Yeah.
So that sort of turning point was really interesting for me. So I think, yeah. And anyway, so I remember like going to school late because I would stay up late to watch movies. I remember like, you know, circling things, even in the TV guide, it wouldn't even have much freaking info. It would just be like, oh, Channel 9, 2 a.m., The Pack, 1977. I'm like, okay, that's got to be about dogs. So I was like, I'm going to watch it regardless. And sure enough, it was. I was like, okay, this is amazing. And then, you know, it comes to 4 a.m. and I fall asleep and get up late for school. So it's like, oh, you know, so yeah, it was kind of a really interesting sort of education. But that's great that you have a father. And I think that's a generational thing as well. I think like, you know, I remember going to RMIT, and one of the girls in the classroom had the same thing that you had, like a dad who introduced us to a lot of films, and that's what got her interested. So I remember talking to her about it, but I was like, well, what did you find for yourself? You know, and she would tell me, and it's like, that's great. So it's interesting when you kind of have someone leading you to things, but then also you finding your own things, and that's really exciting as well. But also, I love what you mentioned about accessibility and the difference, because back in the 80s and early 90s, we didn't have the internet. So therefore, you know, it was about reading up on things or just renting videos that you thought looked cool by the cover. You know, films that had different people in it that you kind of liked in another film, or different directors or writers, or just trying to see as much as you could of each genre. So that was kind of, yeah, that whole sort of self-learning, and then reading up on things in mags and books, and from images as well. Like I remember like heaps of, especially horror books, like critical books, and you'd see like an image for a movie, you go, what the hell is that? And then you'd find it and you go, wow, you know, just to see what that image sparked, just to see what that image belonged to in the whole construct of the movie. But yeah, so there was that whole thing of just sort of finding things. Same with music, same with anything. You just hunted and found things. Now it's accessible, and the irony is a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the without sounding like an old man here, but a lot of the younger generation aren't even interested. So they've got all this accessibility to fuck at their fucking fingertips to find all this stuff, but they're not that interested. And
Mm.
so I find that a little bit tragic. But I don't know. I won't comment on generations. I think there's definitely it's interesting when CineManiac stuff, and you'll have some audience members who are in their early 20s, and I'm like, thank God. Like, I hope come back to more and keep that going, because yeah, it's very, very, it'll be a very sad day when young people stop loving art. Like, it really will.
Mm. Yeah, no, I definitely see it. Like my partner from particular, she grew up with Disney films and basically just that, like maybe some Disney Channel stuff or a lot of kid shows, but like none of it was very long or very dense in terms of like the amount of stuff that would happen, or maybe just how sparse the information would periodically come across the screen. So the amount of films that I've shown her in the past 3 years, including something as long as Lawrence of Arabia, and this was like in 70mm at the Aston. So I'm like, for me, like that's important. Like that's how you want to see this movie. When we got to the intermission, she was still like, "Yeah, I got to read the plot. I have no idea what's happening." I'm like, "It's all right, she's getting there, which is a good thing." So it's like she's very much a part of the TikTok generation and such, where 90-second, hardly even 90-second clips anymore. I mean, Vine really screwed most people over with 7-minute sketches, and that's it. That's the whole joke, and then you got to move on to another 7-second sketch, which was insane. I thank God
Well,
I
that's
thank God I missed that part of the the video online boom.
stupid. I just it's like it's like they don't want to have any kind of longevity in their attention span. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, it's
And
like the irony of a lot of people being like, "Oh, I won't watch a 4-hour movie, but I'll binge watch a 6-hour miniseries." I'm like, cool, but there's priorities, so you got to understand the delineation between the two, especially if most of these 6-hour shows or 8-hour shows or Stranger Things-esque shows are like there isn't actually much happening there in the space of the 6 to 8 hours. So yeah, it's their way of getting information has definitely changed.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how to help that. But you
Keep
mentioned
doing what you're doing with your commentaries and shit. And I mean, hell, we're still learning stuff. So there are
yeah.
people out there just like us.
So yeah, you mentioned her loving Disney stuff. I mean, I don't know what Disney stuff she grew up with, but I also did, and still am very much a fan of classic
Mm.
Disney. And in the '80s, there was this beautiful thing where they reissued a lot of the Disney films. So the first cinema experiences I had were seeing Disney films. So things like Dumbo and Snow White and Song of the South, and all these things screened at the cinema, and on print, of course. And it was just amazing. I remember those being the first experiences for me as a kid in the cinema.
Mm.
So those revival screenings was always happening. They had the reissue stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm a big movie poster collector as well, and it's funny when you go shopping online or whatever, for film posters, you'll see like the original film poster for like Pinocchio, and it's like hundreds of dollars or over $1,000 or whatever. But then you'll see the reissues, like the 60s the 60s or the 70s or the 80s reissue, and it just gets gradually cheaper. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've got some of the reissues for those films because that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a cool wave of things. But the thing is, a lot of people might only know of Disney from like like the 90s onwards, and it's like, oh my God, go back.
Yeah.
It's been around forever. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. It's hard to comment on it. I just find it, I just think that there's definitely lots of love and hope for classic movies, because that's home media is so healthy and thriving, and the TCM Film Festival, there's a whole bunch of film festival rep screenings do really well. It's all there. I think
Mm.
the lie that people tell themselves, who have no interest in owning films or archiving or seeing stuff, is that people don't care about it, and that's bullshit. I think that's ridiculous, and also it's undermining as well, undermining to people like my peers and myself who do all this work. So yeah, I think if I guess it's like spreading the joy, spreading the news. So if people tell someone about a film, or they just advise people if they've loved this, they should see this and this and this, or if they like this Stranger Things show, then maybe go and watch the shit that actually inspired it. And then they'll be like, oh wow, and then maybe get hooked to other things. So
Yeah.
it's all about that. And also a lot of people, you either are into art or you're not, I think. And I think something like Netflix, and you talked about like the binge watching thing, that's for people who kind of are not that invested. They're not really that invested in culture. They have things on as the background. And it's interesting, like a lot of people just don't care about film, or they're people who are into like arts, but one kind of art form. So like I know of people who are like, oh, they'll go and see 50,000 bands a week, but they're not interested in TV, or they're not interested in movies, or they don't go to a gallery, or they don't go or they don't read a book. So there's all these things where people just sort of hone in their focus, and they sort of, so yeah, it's kind of I think it's healthier and far more important if you're into a whole range of things.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people who, like my older brother, he's a casual movie person. He'll casually watch TV shows or movies, sometimes because he's got like 3 screens in his room because he loves playing video games. So he'll have like a video game of 2 screens and then like a TV on the side. So I don't really approve of that kind of way of digesting information, but it's just what he does. It's how he enjoys all formats. So I'm like, look, you do what you do. I'm not a huge video gamer, so it's like he does that and I do the movies. It's good enough for me, Whereas my brother's a sporty one. He'll go out and play football. But then he'll also appreciate all 3 of these. He loves music, he loves films, he loves games. So yeah, but still, I guess we should talk about, in terms of physical media, how you got into doing commentaries.
Yeah, that's really simple. So obviously lots of writing. I've done lots of writing. So books, clearly, lots of them, and lots of essays. So online, in print, all the work I did for CineManiacs, lectures I've done for various film festivals, etc. And then one day, the fabulous, amazing Heather Buckley, who is filmmaker and writer and producer of content for home media, asked me, hey, can you send me like a list of everything you've done? I want to send it to the heads of Kino Lorber. And I said, oh my God, absolutely. And then they came back straight away, the excellent Frank Tarzi, who's head of acquisitions at Kino Lorber, and he said, hey, would you be keen on doing the commentary for the reincarnation of Peter Proud? And I said, absolutely. So that was my first gig. And then from then, it just took off. And so other companies started to hire me. So yeah, that was all good. And then at the same sort of time, Umbrella was doing a Blu-ray release of Orca. And a friend of mine, Leon O'Regan, who actually started his own company called X Film, which released things like Killing of America on Blu-ray via Severin, which is a stunning release. Everyone should have that. He asked if I wanted to do a commentary for Orca, and I said, absolutely. So I remember going into the Umbrella headquarters and recording off his computer. Now I just do everything from home because I figured out how to use my recording system. But yeah, so that was kind of simultaneous with the Kino thing. And so it just went from there. So yeah, Kino hired me again and again, which is fantastic. And then Arrow stepped in, and then Shout Factory and Scream Factory and Eureka and Indicator. They're all fabulous to work for. And now Imprint, which is a local company doing a lot of amazing releases. So Imprint is doing stunning work. Josh Hibbard at Imprint is doing amazing work with that company. But yeah, all these terrific companies working for them. And then, getting really excited to work for like Fun City Editions and oh God, my brain. But yeah, like all these different companies that are, doing all this fabulous work. Second Sight, so yeah, it's really cool. And then just also not only doing commentaries, but the video essays, which I really love doing, because that's where you can do succinct thematic things and then just bring that to the table. But yeah, the commentary thing's great fun, but it's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of hard work. So
Oh yeah, I could tell from your Godspell, and it's like it's like not just a Wikipedia article. This is a whole encyclopedia about this movie. I'm like, all right, this is this is intense, but it's
so
great.
tell me your thoughts on Godspell.
What, the film or the commentary
No.
is? I thought the film was really interesting. Like I've watched a good few musicals in my life, and I'm not much of a religious person anymore. In my case, thank God. But yeah, it's like it was bizarre, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kind of the way they'd filmed it, especially the costuming, which was really nice. I recognized a few of the songs, which was great. And I thought the casting choices were cool. Like everyone seemed like it all seemed fun. The Blu-ray in particular, like the transfer was great, the audio was great, the commentary exceedingly insightful. But yeah, I really like the film. I mean, to the point that I watched it twice within 2 days, just so I could watch it once and be like, okay, this is a film, and then second time, like, and this is the commentary. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, that's a perfect example of what I try to deliver with the commentaries. I want to do like both a critical analysis and like a deep sort of dive into the themes, etc., but also production history. So that's got a lot of info available that I've researched a lot on, and obviously interviewed the people, and they're all and the interviews. Some of the interviews are on the release as well. But yes, that's what I like to do is that healthy balance between production history and analysis. If you don't, I think there's a lot of critics out there who simply want to just do their own, bring their own voice and their own opinion, and that's fine. But then there's other people who just want to relay info about the production, and that's fine. But doing both, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think it gives a good blend because I like that approach that you did with like again, yeah, jumping from like, oh, these people were cast in this, but then that like with Carrie, you're talking with Alexandra about how these guys could have been Princess Leia and Luke, but then also talking about like what like the imagery represents here and how this figure isn't actually Jesus, it's like Saint Michael or whoever, and like just I like yeah how you were jumping between it without making it too confusing or anything. It was a good blend. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And yeah, it's so like you mentioned the Carrie commentary. That was an early one as well, and that was with Alexandra, who is amazing. And for some bizarre reason, that's the only commentary we've done together.
Yeah, I looked for a whole website and I went all the way to the bottom. There was Carrie. I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm watching. I love that film, and I've always wanted to have good commentary for it too. So yeah,
yeah. And that there's a oral history that I'm working on at the moment. It's in proofing now for
nice.
Carrie. So all the interviews that I curated with the help of a fellow writer named Brian Clark, who interviewed a bunch of the people as well. So that should be out soon, but hopefully by the end of the year or early next year. But and I don't want that's just going to be a straight up oral history with lots of beautiful photos and their people's quotes. But I don't want to do any analysis on that film because I feel like it's been written about so much.
Yeah,
And also the commentary I felt like did enough for it. But yeah, that was a fun one to do. And it's interesting because that one has so much to deliver. And that was it's only an hour and a half, and there's two of us talking. I was like, oh my God, we ended up leaving the recording with like multiple pages left of notes.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised. It's surprising how short the film feels once you get through it. It's like,
yeah, it's just very tight. It's a really well written, well succinctly made film. It's so tight. But yeah, no, I love the commentary gig. It's really good. It's amazing when you submit the track. It's a great feeling. But yeah, and it's a lot of research. So you can go, sometimes I'll go deep diving into archive. I'll do interviews if people are still alive. Generally, when films are like from the 70s onwards, there are people who are still alive. So I try and reach out to them. I try and, go whole hog. So recently I did the commentary for Dream Child, which is a film with Coral Brown where she plays an adult Alice in Wonderland. And it's really beautiful, but bizarre and really kind of, at moments, unsettling film. And I was trying to think of someone who worked with Coral Brown who I knew. And Peter Medak came to mind. He directed her in the ruling class. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to ask if you'd have any memories of her. And straight away he said, absolutely. So just having that as an additional feature, like him remembering working with her, that's what I like to do, because I think all this stuff, all this history needs to be on these releases. So, you know, we've got people talking about their work,
Yeah.
and talking about people who are now no longer with us. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to go. I like trying to go that step extra, and companies really get excited about that as well, or they kind of go, oh, you know, well, we don't need it, and I'm like, oh, okay, but then I'll try and manage to sort of manipulate and put it in regardless. So
Yeah.
for Undertale, I did a recent commentary for a William Castle crime film, a noir called Undertow, and the lead of that movie, his last film he did before he passed away was Gremlins. So I thought, you know, what would be really cool if Joe Dante, the director of Gremlins, talks about him. So I had him do like 15 minutes talking about this actor, and I inserted it into the commentary. So it came out like, you know, there's this whole segment in that commentary about this guy, this actor. So, you know, that's from someone like Joe Dante. So that kind of thing is really fun. I like doing that kind of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's interesting, the spectatorship of commentaries. There's a lot of people just can't deal with analysis. They just don't like hearing analysis. They don't like critical readings into things.
Yeah.
And those people, oh, well, you know, that's fine. You don't care about that. Well,
Yeah. To each their own. Yeah.
And then there's people who get kind of, and I think, yeah, I don't know, there's a lot of kind of, I just think there's sometimes a lot of people who that's, I don't know, don't really want a deep dive, or they just don't have the capabilities of doing it, and that what they do is just do the, you know, the facts.
Mm.
You know, this person was in this film, and then they did this and this and this, and then
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, you know, like, let's come on, let's go deeper.
I guess I should ask, in terms of your writing. So you started with Fangoria and then you did books, or did you do essays and then got into Fangoria? And well, obviously you did essays, then you got into Fangoria. But yeah, how was that process like?
Yeah, so, you know, just writing for yourself and doing heaps of that, and then just submitting. There was a guy named Scott Lysina who worked for Fangoria, and I remember I was working at the Melbourne Theatre Company at the time, just doing box office, and I was like, I was just going to send him some stuff. So I sent him a couple of essays, and he liked them, and then some of them got published online on the Fangoria website, and then the editor changed over. It was Chris Alexander, who is another hero of mine. So, you know, people like Chris Alexander, Heather Buckley, Frank Tarzi, Alexandra Haller-Nicholas. There's like a bunch of people that have been really, really helpful in boosting my career the way I try and do for others. You know, so it's a nice network of people, but mostly. Anyway, so and then what happened was Chris was like, cool, what have you got? And I suggested stuff, and then he was like, yep, and he greenlit stuff. And during his run through Fangoria, I think I was in pretty much every issue, which was just wonderful. And then during that, Chris had a book published from Midnight Marquee, which was a company that I always liked. I always bought a lot of their content. A lot of it was classic movie monster stuff. And he had a book out with them. I think it was called The Blood Splattered Movie Guide or something. But he had this book, and I said, you know, I've got an idea for eco horror, like, because that's one of my favorite topics, and no one really has done a book on that. And I go, do you reckon I could just pitch to that company? He goes, yeah. So Gary and Susan Speller run that company. So I just pitched it to them, and they liked it. So then that came out, and that's still in print, and it still sells really well. And it's, you know, it's a book that, you know, goes through all these eco horror movies, and, you know, anyway, so that started it. And then after that, I did lots more essay writing and blah blah blah, lots more for periodicals. Kat Allinger, another wonderful person, she invited me to become an EIC on Diabolique. So we run that together, and that's, you know, I introduced this whole idea of not just having horror content, but basically all kinds of genres. And then that sort of took off. And then the next book I wanted to write was an overview book again on 70s film musicals. And I pitched that to a company called Bear Manor Media. And I got in touch with Ben Omar, who's another awesome guy, really, really, really good guy who just, looks up, takes care of his writers and is very, very supportive. And I asked him about that and he loved the idea and that happened. And then after that, he's like, look, I'd love another book from you, but can we do like something like a making of or, a book that's focused on one film? And I said, yeah, and I've never done this, so it'd be interesting to do like a big deep dive on one film. So the first thing was Cujo. And so nothing has been really written on Cujo. So I thought, nah, fuck it, let's do it. Let's go deep diving on Cujo. And that was a big job as well. And then that led to things like the Christine book and then the Howling book. The Howling book was with Centipede Press. And they do really beautiful books. And I loved their book on Salem's Lot and I loved their book on The Shining. So, they took up the Howling. And that was also, so the Howling, Cujo and Christine books were kind of half an analysis and then half quotes from everyone. And I tried to get as many people as possible from each film.
Yeah, I gotta ask, what's it like to actually get into contact with these people? Like, I envy the fact that you've talked to John Carpenter of all people.
Yeah, well, John Carpenter was interesting because the in for him was Elvis, because when I was doing the musicals book, I was like, I'm just going to reach out and see if I can get John Carpenter to talk about his Elvis film from 79. And I thought, let's just do it. And I just asked, and the agent was super nice. And he was super eager because he has never really spoken about Elvis. So we spent a good hour and a bit on the phone, and he was charming and lovely and just it was great. And he had some really lovely stories. And you could tell how enthusiastic he was to talk about Elvis. And then when that book got published, obviously I sent him a copy and he was so nice. He sent a photo of him carrying the book, which really, really bumped sales. Like, it really helped. And it was really cool and supportive and lovely. And from then on, he's just been really lovely and supportive. So when Christine came around, he was like, of course, I'll do an interview about Christine.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So that happened. And yeah, but it's interesting because I remember when I worked on like the commentary for like Black Moon Rising, which is a movie that he actually initially wrote the story for. Yeah. I asked if he'd like to contribute. He goes, nah, not really. I just know that I didn't like what the end result was. And that was cool. So there's been things that he's kind of gone nah about, which is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just about doing it. Like me and Kat talk about this all the time. There's a lot of writers who are scared to interview people. They're just scared to reach out. And it's like, well, no, you got to, because also you have to remember it's not just about your voice. Like, you have to do journalistic stuff as well. It's not just about your opinions, etc. It's about getting the inside scoop from people. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't remember a thing, and that's okay. But that's when you have to step in and fill in the gaps with research.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was it. I love interviewing people. I think, and I've never really had any kind of bad experiences, which is great. There's been times where some people be like, I don't remember, I don't know, I don't remember. That's fine. Yeah. What is sometimes exciting is when you talk to people and you bring in your own take on stuff and they hear it and they're like, oh, that's great. Yeah, I never, and that's cool. That's kind of like a little bit of a kind of boost to the ego. Like, I remember talking to Norman Jewison about Jesus Christ Superstar, his film version of that, and talking about how this is like, a rock analogy, how it's like, Christ as the first rock star, and Mary Magdalene as a groupie, and the Caiaphas and Annas as the record industry, the rival record industry, and Judas as the manager, and all this stuff. And he was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. That's like, yeah. So it was nice. It's nice when you hear them respond to your nerdy analysis.
Yeah.
It's so nice talking to people. And then what happens is, for the most part, I keep in touch with them. It's like, it's really cool. And especially when you're doing something like a book or a Blu-ray or whatever, these things live forever. So, you can kind of always remember that that's what you bonded over. And also it's nice when you've met people, know people, and sadly they've passed away, but their work and their interview with you lives on. When for instance, like Imprint did a reflection of fear with Sondra Locke. And I had interviewed Sondra Locke a few years ago, and she passed away a few years ago. So I said, oh, it would be so nice to have her archive interview on this release. So Josh was like, yeah, this is that's great. So they put it on there, and that's there forever now. So everyone can hear her talking about reflection of fear, and then everything else. Like, she's very candid about her career and how Clint Eastwood, treated her. And yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I've got that one in my collection as well, because it's nice having a boutique Australian label. Like, I know we have like Umbrella Australia, but I don't personally consider that like a boutique thing, but they will occasionally do like Beyond Genres or something. But having Imprint be like specifically their numbered spines, their limited edition releases, got audio commentaries, you got essays, all this kind of stuff. It's just cool. Like, I've been seeing this stuff for years about Arrow Video and Criterion, and I'm like, that's always great. It's like prestigious, but now we've got something in Australia, and it's like it's cool to even personally know people who have actually, or just at least have met people who have worked on these films. So it's like, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. I gotta ask, because I have it in my questionnaire. What was it like being nominated for a Bram Stoker Award?
Oh, that was nice. That was really nice. I got the email and a certificate which said, nomination for blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I remember the award ceremony happening while I was at my day job at the shop, and was watching it live. And then it came up to the part for the award. I don't remember who won, but it was really nice to hear my name and the title read out in front of this big audience. But yeah, no, it's a great honor. It's really lovely. It's always nice when that kind of recognition happens. It's really cool. And the same with the Rondos. I mean, but it's I guess, awards are fine. I mean, it's funny because it's such a cliche, but it's the whole thing about being nominated is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd like to be nominated for something, but I don't know what the hell I'd do to be able to earn such a nomination. But no, I can. Yeah, it's cool. It's nice to know that you've been recognized at least, because even if you don't win, it's like, hey, I've been like recognized like a bunch against all these other collective works and against my peers, and it's like, it's just can be a cool experience. So yeah. Oh, damn. It's one of those things where I have the question at the top of my head. What the hell was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Do you have a favorite commentary that you've done?
Oh, God. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think the ones where I get to champion either films that are kind of people don't, see as a serious work, or a work that needs to be taken seriously or whatever, or a commentary where I get to champion people who kind of seem to be neglected. So a lot of and also a lot of people who people neglect because they just don't know who they are. So a lot of classic stuff. So for instance, it's nice when I get to talk about, take a lot of character actors, a lot of character actors who were, of color, or a lot of women who were ignored behind the scenes, like writers and stuff. So that's really always important to me. I think that's really cool, especially when they're from the 30s and 40s, etc. I guess, and as far as like, making films kind of, shining a light on the film that's never had the same kind of exposure. Something like the Night of the Lepus release, which people laugh about that movie because it's about giant killer rabbits. And of course, that's hilarious.
Yeah, my mate introduced me to that. I haven't seen it yet, but he's like, you got to watch this one. It's giant killer rabbits. I'm like, okay.
So it was nice to do that commentary and not have it be like just, riffing on, like, basically talking down on it. Like,
I've come here to appreciate this film, and hopefully you appreciate it because of this. And
I mean, there's people out there who go, oh my God, how can you read so much into this film? But that's the job of the critic, But it was nice to do that and give the film kind of its reward. It's a just, I guess, a reward. But also, I guess, anything that I love, like I don't know, it's hard to say. I can't say favorites, but I love working on everything I've done.
Yeah.
Has there been titles that have been a chore? Not so much about the title itself and working on it, but maybe when I've had to say, I don't know, rely on um I don't know, someone else doing it with me, maybe because you kind of want that to and fro and that flow to be a bit sort of stronger. I don't know what I'm saying there, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe cut that out.
No, I can get that if like you're doing a commentary with someone and you like expect this kind of good back and forth between you and the other person, but it just doesn't connect. And you're like, I'll just say my piece, then you could say your piece. It'll be awkward, but it'll be informative. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Let's just hope for the best. Yeah, I can understand that if working with particular people, like not exactly that they're bad or that they're annoying, but it's just that sometimes it just doesn't gel. Like especially in the field of writing or even just artistry in general. So yeah, I can understand that. Um, God, I keep forgetting all the questions I've got to ask. Um, I guess we should talk about the Cinemaniacs because there's probably a part of the audience who might be watching this who might be like, yeah, what the hell is that? Because they don't live in Australia or they don't live in Melbourne. So
Oh,
would
we
you?
need more sales. We need people to come to screenings. So
Yeah.
now that basically people, hopefully, most people are vaxxed, as everyone should be, and everyone being safe and staying healthy and stuff, come back to the cinemas and come and support rep screenings. Cinemaniacs is a rep thing. It's basically a monthly thing at Acme. We host films and we have special lectures before the film or sometimes post movie panels. We program everything ranging from whatever genre, whatever period. Like this year, we've had things from Gun Crazy to All That Jazz to Creep Show, to Network, to They Shoot Horses, Don't They, to The Last House on the Left, whatever it is. And what we do is we pepper the screening with a whole bunch of things, whether it's raffle prizes or talks before, sometimes video intros from people who are associated with the film, just a whole range of things to make it special that other institutions in Melbourne just don't do.
Hmm.
So we want to kind of make this something unique, a unique experience. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like trying to get folk to book earlier rather than sort of just rocking up on the day.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it's wonderful. It's a lot of work. Again, it's like, yeah, it's endless work. We actually published a journal a few years ago via Cinemaniacs, which was a book with a lot of contributing writers, all about scarecrows in film and TV,
Mm.
which
Yeah.
was really nice to work on. And yeah, just a beautiful looking book. But yeah, lots of stuff. But yeah, Cinemaniacs has been going strong for a long time now. And yeah, I mean, it's very, very relatively young compared to other film groups, of course. But yeah, I think it's a different kind of cinema experience. And you've been to screenings, so
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely because again, the first one you invited me to was like, even going there, it was like just such a bizarre thing to be like, oh, we're gonna have this person who's like has like a doctorate in like film studies discuss the film before you watch it, or you've watched the film now, let's talk about it. I'm like, this is just like my lectures at uni, except there's like 30 people here, and it's like we're all like close knit, and we all like kind of have like a good sense of humor about stuff, and it's a warm and welcoming environment is always a good way for me to phrase it. And like you've also got the additional things of, oh hey, there's like raffles and stuff, so not bribery per se, but like but like, hey, you can also potentially win like a cool Blu-ray release of this film, or like a booklet or some kind of novel or something that's about film. And it makes you feel more rewarded by being there because it's like, hey, we're all a part of this. And yeah, I've always enjoyed it as few times as I've been, but I've always enjoyed going. So yeah.
it's about community, it's about building community.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like rather than like, and I love all these other things, but like, a generic film festival, people go in, they come out of the film, and then they might just stick together and then go home or to dinner or whatever. But here, it's like after the movie, let's see how many people we can collect and hang out afterwards to talk about the film. And it builds community, it makes people connect. it's just a nice vibe, I think, and we're very, very happy to be at Acme now.
Mm.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just that matter of trying to see more people and new faces pop up. So, you know, it's, but you know, that'll come, it'll get there. It's just, I think COVID really, really did strike something in the heart of you know, social gatherings.
Mm. Yeah. No, I definitely know I've personally limited mine quite a lot, but at the same time, I've also picked up on work a lot more. So it's like harder to, justify going out and seeing friends when I've got work the next day or whatever. So, but still, you gotta make the effort, make the time. But I was talking to one of the a few people from the CineManiacs last time for Going Crazy, and they were saying how like you'd provided like a physical copy of the film so everyone would have their chance to watch it beforehand. Do you guys do it like collectively or like at your own, in your own time?
Do you mean like for the other board members?
Yeah, as in you're like, yeah, the other board members when
Yeah,
like
I
you've got a
mean,
release,
like
yeah.
I get, I mean, well, I own a lot of what we screen.
Mm.
And if one of them wants to see it before anything, they haven't seen it before, yeah, I'd probably do that for
Yeah.
sure. Um, if they can't access it another way. But yeah, generally, I mean, the board is really only now, God, how many is it? 5 people now. So everyone's pretty much on par, on, you know, they all know what the films I'm programming are, they've seen them.
Mm.
They haven't, yes, I'll try and get them a copy, or
Yeah.
they can access it just so they know. But yeah, and also it's like a lot of that's to do with, I thought, to do with marketing, but marketing is a really, really weird thing. It's like you really can't guess what audiences are going to come to what. Like, and also I hate target marketing, target audience. I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
So,
I've got that with the YouTube thing because it's like, okay, I can make videos talking about how I collect movies, but what if I do a analysis on something? Will people be watching that as well? Sometimes it's just up in the air. Yeah.
yeah, I just think it's really offensive to it. Like, I'd be really offended if people said you know, I'd only be into horror. It's like, well, no, like I like a lot of things, and that's the other thing that I always get irritated about with a lot of well, some horror fans, where they think that if you like other things, then you're surely not a horror fan because you.
Mm.
And it's like, no, like horror is super. It's like the first genre I really fell in love with, but I also love everything else, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's silly to just limit yourself. So there's a lot of people who are limited in themselves. So I found that out with my programming. There'll be people who will actually. I remember a couple of years ago, people going, oh yeah, I don't want to go to that or that or that, but I'll go to this and this. You need to have more horror on the schedule. It's like, well, no, I don't actually. I don't need to do ever. It's my thing. Like, sorry. So I'm going to have whatever I want.
Yeah.
And also, your idea of horror is generally very limited. You think
Mm.
of horror and you only think of 80s horror and you only think of really kind of obvious films. It's like, well, horror is a wide range of things. So I remember a perfect example of that when we did a film festival it was like a hag exploitation film festival. And one of the movies we chose to screen wasn't really a hag film in this classic sense. It was called That Cold Day in the Park, a Robert Altman film with Sandy Dennis. And it's a psych horror film. It's a trapped man horror film. It's a psychological horror film. It's very intense. And a lot of it's like a play. It's 2 people talking, but it's very intense and amazing. And the audience it was like a packed house. Alexandra did the intro for it. You know, she single-handedly convinced a whole bunch of people who've never seen it to come, which is great. Because she has, as she should have, a lot of great clout. She's an amazing writer and academic and critic.
Mm.
Anyway, so she'd done the talk, the film played out, and by the last 10 minutes, which is really full on, not a freaking sound, like you could hear a pin drop. And I'm
Mm.
like, fantastic. This is a whole bunch of an audience where 80% of them are like, you know, horror nerds who love, you know, giallo, or they love, you know, slashers, or they love gore films, and they're watching this really, really pond-like, quiet, very, very, very meditative horror film, this psych horror film, and they're enthralled.
Mm.
And I'm like, this is good. This is where people kind of go, oh fuck, horror's so broad.
Yeah.
So that's something as well. So it's like also people, and Sally from the team has said it before, people have to trust the programming. And
Yeah.
I think they do. I think they most certainly do. They go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go and see this. And it's funny because if I program, I don't know, a film from the 30s, people are just there'll be people who go, oh, I don't want to see that because it's like, why? And then when they do turn up, they're like, oh my God, I actually really enjoyed it. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like you need to actually embrace stuff and just don't be so closed-minded.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a tricky one because yeah, you want people to come, but you don't want to alienate people, but you don't want people to sell themselves short as spectators. I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely, especially when it comes to you're saying with horror, I'm like I think that's probably my favorite genre behind just with comedy just slightly behind it. But it's like for me for horror, because like I grew up with some it's a conventional film, sure, but it's still Alien. And I was watching that when I was 6 years old. Not an interesting, not a great thing to do, but like from there I learned only about like the 80s slashes like Halloween and such when I was in very late high school to early university. So that picked up my craze for slasher films and Giallo and such. But it's like for me, they've never been scary films. The scarier ones are the ones that are more intense, like psychological films. And so that's like, yeah, that's where real horror gets to. So yeah, I mean, I've always found, yeah, having a broadness in all of them to be quite nice. And I mean, hell, I even like, surrealist horror as well. So it's always
Yeah.
good to trip people up with stuff. Yeah.
Well, there's room for everything. I love gore. I'm a big gore hound, but I
Mm.
also love, your classic Universal monsters.
Yes,
Like
love
so it's
those.
about loving a whole wide range. I think it's really silly to just sell yourself short. In saying that, however, and I get picked on about this, I tend to not really like a lot of contemporary films, and ultimately that's to do with aesthetic. I can't visually get involved. Like I can't, my eyes can't really adjust to digital filmmaking. It really kind of like, oh, I just can't see like, and CGI gore and
Mm.
annoying people.
Yeah, I can
So,
get I think I've like got a bit of a contrast that where it's like because I've grown up with a more digital era that I'm like I can blend the two. Like I am happy with film, I'm happy with digital, but yeah, when it comes to stuff like that, yeah, the CGI go like there's just stuff that modern technology just throws you off with. Like if you were to compare the thing with the remake or prequel, it's like, yeah, I'm good. I can just stick with the original.
mm.
You got a better director, you got a better cast, you got a great practical effects. I mean, how one of my favorites is the creature from Black Lagoon, which I don't know if you can see. I've got a small little display here of even a signed poster on the other side of the wall.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've got a lot of. I think I've got quite some range, especially.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah,
fine. That's important. And I think that just it keeps you open-minded to a wide range of things. I think it's very, very tragic if people are only into one kind of thing.
mm,
And also, yeah, I think people need to stop speaking in absolutes. When I hear people say, "Oh, I don't like horror,"
mm,
I'm like, I don't understand how you can't because it's all very different.
yeah,
So, Nosferatu is not the same as The Exorcist, and The Exorcist is not the same as Friday the 13th, and Friday the 13th is not the same as Rosemary's Baby. And,
yeah,
it goes on and on. There's this very massive diversity, even within subgenres.
mm,
Like if you look at slasher movies, they're all very different. Like,
mm,
look at Hell High compared to Graduation Day, or compared to Visiting Hours, or compared to Happy Birthday to Me. They're all very different,
yeah,
very different. So I think that's something that people commonly say because they just don't want to. They don't want to learn. People,
mm,
when you talk to people and you're really passionate about something and their eyes just glaze over, they just don't have any interest.
mm,
And after you're done with your sentence, they kind of bring up something that makes them more comfortable because they don't have any social intelligence. They don't know how to actually ask questions.
yeah,
That does my head in now, and I can't be around those kind of people because it's like, well, if you don't care about what I love, then you actually probably don't care about me. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's something where it's like, well, I've just spent 40 hours listening to you. So I'm going to bring up something that's important to me. And if you just glaze over and not aren't interested or can't even feign interest or even like pretend to ask questions about it, then what's the point? That's why I really, 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 really love live talks. I fucking love them. I love doing them because in that regard, it's pretty much you've got like an audience captive. And that, they have to sit there and watch you talk. And I like that.
Mm.
There's a bit of a power there, and I love doing them. I really do. So I can carve that, hour or whatever, where I can just stand there and talk about movies. It's great.
Yeah. I guess jumping back to the cinematics, did you personally start it? Because I don't know too much of the history about the Cinemaniacs as a group.
Yeah, we did. It was me and a couple of other people. We started it at the Tote, actually, upstairs in what was then the Cobra Bar. And it was like a cocktail bar with a sheet and a projector and a DVD player.
Sounds ideal.
It started like that as a sort of, indie DIY thing. So every Sunday night, I think it was, it'd be like a double feature and we'd just play them. And it was just very, very small scale. And then we kind of got excited and thought this could be huge. And we asked Acme what they thought, and they said, that's fine, but this is the rental fee, blah, blah, blah. So we did a couple of screenings there, and then we moved to a place called Backlot. And that's where we were for a while. And that was really a wonderful home for us. And then unfortunately they closed down. This is before the pandemic. And we had to move. And then we were sort of thinking, where the hell can we move? And then lockdowns happened, and then Acme actually approached us and they said, hey, we love what you do, would you be keen? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. So now we're there. But yeah, it was me and a couple of other people sort of started a film thing from the Tote as the Tote roots, and that ran for about a year. I've still got the old programs actually, which are really cool. They were double features that I tried to link thematically. And yeah, funnily enough, we actually screened. I think we did screen Squirm. Oh no, we wanted to screen Squirm. The rest of the year is cool. We've got Squirm in August. We've got, oh my god, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. We've got Child's Play 2. We have An Unmarried Woman, and we have Female Trouble. So that's not varied. I don't know what is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm definitely keen. I haven't seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls yet, so
wow.
I'm very interested for that. And Chucky 2, Child's Play 2 is probably my favorite of those. I even just showed my partner those like maybe a month or two ago because she really wanted to. I like collecting NECA figures, so I collected Chucky, and she's like, I gotta watch those films. I'm like, sure. So I just showed her Child's Play 1 and 2 as a double feature. So that was pretty good. So I think personally, because like since high school, I've benefited from my one main takeaway I've gotten from uni outside of learning more about writing about films and stuff is that finding like film people circles. So like all of my friends who, not too many people, but enough people to just enjoy life with, it's like they all like films and they can all come out and watch films, and one of them will be the kind of guy who will be like, oh, let's go see this like 3-hour long Western at the Astor because it's Sergio Leone and it's Once Upon a Time in the West and it's the best Western ever made. I'm like, all right, sure, let's do that. And then like my other friend will be like, he might be like, let's just go watch some Marvel films. I mean, some of it's just a bit lowbrow, more in technicality, but some just chill, so we can just chill out and watch a film or whatever. So it's like with my partner, I'm like, I can just show her whatever. And I showed her, we watched Top Gun Maverick the other week, which was great. And she wanted to watch the Mission Impossible films because of it. So it's like, she's, getting more and more into watching films, which I appreciate. So yeah, it's nice to have. And of course, with the meeting the Cinemaniacs the other month, and like, even though I've met some of you before, it's like getting to actually hang out with you after the film and, drinking and doing all kinds of shit and just chatting around about just films and TV and our own experiences with stuff, and it's great. I really enjoy it, so it's definitely my cup of tea. So it's like,
good.
it's nice. Yeah, but yeah, I've always enjoyed that. And I think that's also where I get that from my dad, where it's like, just I like talking to people about this kind of stuff. I like listening to stuff about it. Like, it's always great to go to Minotaur and see you there and be like, oh, great, he's gonna suggest a new film to watch. Like the one I picked up a few months ago, the Killdozer one, and just like I just seen it on the shelf and I was like, that looks great. And then you just responded saying, oh yeah, that's got a great commentary track. And I realized that you had done it. And I was like, of course he's done it. And that was with Jared. Is it Gahan? Gahan? I have no idea how to pronounce his
Yeah,
surname.
Garrett Garn, who's one of
Gahan.
the people who runs Monster.
Yes, yes, which I've gone to a few of those as well, which is great. So yeah, that was an interesting one because I think that's a distinctly different commentary, I think, to Carrie and Godspell, where Godspell is purely you talking so informatively about everything. Carrie is you and Alexandra having a conversation about it. It's great. And then Killdozer was like, you have your part, he has his part, and it kind of just goes back between the two. And I'm like, it's interesting. But I feel like that was maybe a pandemic thing because it seemed that way that you guys were in different places doing your own things because that's just how the universal circumstances were, where you just can't be in a room hanging out and chatting about this. So yeah,
Right, exactly right.
yeah, um, yeah. I think I got to ask, of course. This is kind of like detracting almost all the way from all this stuff, but personally, do you have a favorite film?
Not really, no.
Oh,
That's too hard.
yeah, I can understand. I mean, look, I've got. Do you have Letterboxd, or do you know what it is?
I don't have one. I know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. I've for some reason I had the idea that maybe you'd be the kind of person who'd have it as well, just to log the films. But I guess you've got such a expansive memory that you don't need to do that because you already know what you've watched. Um, but yeah, like I go on that probably almost every day because I like getting ideas about more films and logging my own films and such. And it's like I've put in the effort to try to consider what my favorite film is because me being in the YouTube genre and whatever, it's like, oh, let's have top 10 lists and shit like that, whatever. Try to get those views, get people interested in more films and whatever, which I don't mind. I follow people who, review criterions and stuff and do like bundle hauls and like, oh, you should check out this film. It's about this and whatever. So I've got a bunch of like Columbia noirs and stuff just because of that. Um, I mean, if it's not obvious, but I ended up deciding on The Thing as my favorite. It's either that or Blade Runner 2049. But then it's, Swiss Army Man or it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So I've got a handful of films like that. But yeah, I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, it's just really hard to decide. Like, there's definitely films that are comfort movies that I'll go back to and watch every year,
Mm,
and some multiple times a year. But yeah, some people are very quick to answer what their favorite film is. I'm just not. I just love so much. Like,
yeah.
there are definitely movies that, like I said, I'd always go back to, and and interestingly enough, a lot of times, a lot of my favorite films, how like there'll be multiple releases of certain films on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever. Sometimes I
Yeah.
don't even own the film, so some of my favorite films I don't even probably own.
Okay.
Or I've just got the old DVD of it and that's enough. So it just depends. I think like there's definitely go to. Also, I do this thing where I do like seasonal watches. So, for instance, when it's Easter time, I'll try and do a lot of Easter-based film or films that are related that make me think of Easter. Same
Mm,
with Christmas, Halloween. I'll always do like the whole month of this horror viewing. But I watch stuff all the time. I'll tell you, one thing that's really necessary for people who do what I do is you have to have break time watching. So when you're working on a commentary or an essay or whatever, you generally are engrossed in that film, and then also watching stuff that's related. But you need time yourself. You need to have a break and have a timeout, and then watch stuff that's not related. So for me, a lot of times that might be just involving myself in like a TV series. At the moment, that's just high rotation of Dynasty, and that's like a really nice escape. And then next, I've got the box set of Hill Street Blues, which I'm going to do. So it's kind of like it's nice to have those break watches. And yeah, I'm a big TV fan. So
Mm.
classic TV. So that's exciting to dive into as well.
Yeah, I can imagine you probably when you're doing commentaries or even just writing about these films that you have to watch them several times. Well, at
Oh, yeah.
least do you have to? You have to, yeah. Oh, I phrase that such a I phrase that question so weirdly. Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. So the way I usually do it is I'll watch it and then I'll break down the scenes and then I'll plow notes into each scene breakdown
mm,
and then start writing. And some things I'll script and some things I won't. Um, yeah, it's sometimes a lot easier to script it because you can have everything done perfectly, but then sometimes it's easy just to riff. So just depending on the film and just depending on what the scene calls for. But yeah, multiple viewings is essential, even if you know the
mm.
film back to front. Like, yeah.
Yeah, do you ever get tired of rewatching? Like, if say if there's a film you dislike,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh, yeah, no, I can imagine that.
Absolutely. And then also, just recently though, I watched a film that I worked on last year and just watching it by, just not having to work on it, just to watch it. And that felt really good. Like it felt
Mm,
nice not to have to fucking write notes.
yeah. Yeah. No, I know because we had back in late high school because I did a media class for year like 11, 12, whatever. And that's what got me into actually writing and just focusing more on films because before that, like before I was 16, it was like films were just a thing that was there and I enjoyed watching them. But then suddenly it's like, oh, I don't actually like doing physics because it's too much math. Let me do a different class. Hey, how about media? Because my brother had done media and it was like, it seemed pretty cool because I'd worked with him on doing a film. And then suddenly it's like, oh, you have to watch like two films because we had like it was two films each year and they'd usually be thematically related. I think one year was The Shining and Dead Calm, and it was like you'd have to watch it over and over and over and over again. The Shining's like 3 hours long, but I think that got me more in the mindset of I love like really long, films like this. And where my brother is like the complete opposite. Like he had to watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World like 6, 7 times to do an essay on it, and he absolutely hates the film now. He can't stand it anymore. He's watched it too many times, whereas I've watched it so many times and I just completely love it. So I
Yeah.
guess I didn't have to write about it. So I guess that's my benefit there. But I
That's
mean, I
right.
still I still love The Shining and I enjoy Dead Calm and all those. So
Yeah, good stuff.
yeah.
All right, Julian, that's great. Are you coming tomorrow?
I plan to, yes. I'm going to the city as it is, but I got to make sure I don't have the COVID. So,
Oh,
assuming I test negative, I'll be there.
good,
Yeah.
good, good. Yeah, it'll be a fun screening.
Yes. I do like creep show.
Craig coming as well. So,
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
well,
Well,
thank you
I'll
so much.
hopefully.
I hope that was all right.
Yes. Yeah. That was wonderful.
Fabulous. All right.
Cool.
Well, I'll see you tomorrow if you're healthy.
Yes. Yes. Ideally so.
Cool. Thanks, Julian. That was fun.
Yeah. No worries. Cheers. Hey, hope you guys enjoyed that interview of Lee. And again, thank you, Lee, for coming in and sharing your time. It was wonderful. If you want to check out more interviews, there'll be a playlist up there where there's a whole selection of videos. I've talked to different people about all kinds of stuff from life, gender, politics, film, all kinds of jazz. You can also find Lee online. He's done various amounts of audio commentaries for Arrow Video and Kino Lorber and such. He's always talking about it on Twitter and such, which is always great. He's also done a handful of books, which you can find as well. A lot of them are on Amazon or some local retailers. You can also check out CineManiacs if you live down in Melbourne, or if you can visit Melbourne. It's at the end of every month, usually the last Friday of every month. But they've also got a Facebook page and such that you can find. There'll be a link to that down below. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. See you next time.